And Dharmaraj.
Sir, let us start our program, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I welcome all the participants to this webinar. First of all, I welcome Mrs. U. Farida Usman ma'am to deliver the welcome address.
A very pleasant morning to one and all present here. I thank our management, principal, vice principal, and head of the department for giving me this opportunity to deliver welcome address. In this lockdown, all the institutions and organizations are doing webinar, and we have taken different topic as we want to recall the literature, knowledge among the faculty and students. In this webinar, we have taken translation in practice from translator's perspective. Translation enables effective communication between people around the world. It is a courier for the transmission of knowledge, a protector of cultural heritage, and essential to the development of a global economy. Highly skilled translators are key. Translation studies helps practitioners develop those skills. I feel very proud to welcome our chief guest, Dr. Dharani, MA, MPhil, MEd, PGDCA, PhD, Assistant Professor and Head Department of English in Government Arts and Science College, Avinashi, Tirupur District. She has done her MA in PSGR, Krishnamal College for Women, MPhil Linguistics and her PhD in Bharathiar University, Coimbatore. She got 20 years teaching experience and she also a research guide since 2011, both MPhil and PhD. She conducted training program on the topics soft skills and communication skills for the school teachers and the students in higher secondary schools and school leaving students of Jaffna, Mullaitivu and Kilinochchi of Sri Lanka for 15 days in connection with the invitation sent by the Consulate General of India in Jaffna. She taught how to create e-contents for the UG and PG English literature students for 8 years since 2004. She translated the book edited by a cancer survivor entitled A Role of Women in Curative Care into Tamil. Create online contents for the UG and PG English literature students of PSG College of Arts and Science, Coimbatore since 2004. She also translated the poems of Canadian Tamil writer Giridharan into English. She made paper presentations, international level 10, national level 13, regional level 4. She went as a resource person to various colleges and she has delivered 40 talks. She published 12 journals and e-journals. Such a wonderful and highly talented woman has given her acceptance to organize the webinar in our college. On behalf of our college, I once again welcome you, ma'am. I welcome our management and our industrious principal, Dr. S. Sukumar, who guide us to conduct this webinar. Welcome you, sir. I welcome our distinguished vice principal, Dr. S. Srinivasan, who always support and encourage us in all our endeavors. Welcome you, sir. I welcome our head of the department, M. Rajalakshmi, who take effort to conduct this webinar. Welcome you, ma'am. I welcome all the scholars, faculty, participants, and students who participated in this webinar. and encourage us with great success. Once again, I welcome you all. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Shall I start presenting? Good morning, sir.
1 or 2 minutes. Yes, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, sir. So, shall I start presenting, sir?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So on behalf of our management and myself and Department of English, it's immense pleasure to thank you, ma'am, because this is in a different area, which is coined by the English department, translation. We are doing our activities only in English. Today, I read one information from Nidhi Yadav. Head has told that. So each and every organization, you take up your regional language, not only from the English. So when we are taking the regional language, automatically we can get it growth from this stage. So if we are going to take the regional language, translation is playing major role. So that's what only we have coined this translation in practice. I wish the Department of English, head and learned faculties who has taken the effort to conduct this webinar on this topic. I wish them. Then I thank to our eminent chief guest, Dr. Dharani ma'am. It's really a pleasure to us to thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So I welcome all the participants. Nearly we have crossed the 260. This is 2-day session. So fruitfully you can learn from this webinar. We don't have this chance after open the college. Maybe after August or September, we are not able to sit and learn. So you can gain the information from the chief guest. It should be implemented in your life. So that is the ultimate aim of this webinar session. So I wish everyone, those who are involved in this great event. Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone, participant. I think I have to make a request now. Kindly mute your audio and video so that you can listen to me. Yes, thank you. Good morning, sir. Good morning, friends across the country. I'm really happy to be here as a resource person for the topic translation. First of all, I would like to thank the principal, sir, for having invited me for this webinar. And personally, I would like to thank the Department of English of Parvati's College of Arts and Science and Dharmaraj sir and Mahendran sir for their constant effort to talk to me and to bring me to the webinar. It's really a great pleasure meeting you all here in this dark side of our academic life. And the topic is very interesting. Okay, so translation, as sir said, we are in a country where many languages are used. So I can even see in the participants list, people across the country, they are participating. So our mother tongue can't be used here. So we are using a common language. So that itself is a kind of like a translation. Whatever we have in our mind, in our mother tongue, we are translating into English and we are speaking. So translation is there in our day-to-day life. It is not there only in a particular part of the academic side. Everywhere you find translation. And this translation has become a kind of like a discipline in our literature, in our studies also, because we are in a situation to teach translation to our students also. So I want to discuss all those things. I myself is a translator. I'm translating so many poems into English or from English to Tamil. So I keep on doing it as a hobby. I'm not actually doing it full-time basis. Basically a teacher. So while teaching, I would like to translate some pieces, and I would like to know how it appears in the other language. So we know two languages, all of us, the teachers of English. So that is actually a kind of like a day-to-day activity. So we are going to have a discussion on what I have been doing and what I have learned as a teacher and as a translator too. So that's my focus here. So with these few points, I think I can share the screen now. Hope you are able to listen to me and you are able to see me, right? If there is any problem, technical glitch, please chat or make a question here, make a question appear here. And in between, if you have any questions also, you please type in the chat box. I'll see to it and I'll answer. Okay, I'll go to the presentation. Okay, are you able to see my presentation here?
Yes, madam.
Yes. So this is a topic I have given, translation in practice from translator's perspective. So I'm basically a teacher, but I'm translating. So how we have been using translation in the classroom, in education, and in various parts of our life. That I would like to discuss here. Hope you are able to get few points from me, because you're all teachers. Most of you are teachers across the country. And I can see some people from North India also. Maybe here and there I'll be using one or two Tamil words for this example purpose, but I'll explain everything in English. Okay. So as you can see, I'm a teacher. I'm an assistant professor of English. I'm teaching in Government Arts and Science College, Avinashi. It's in Tirupur, in Tamil Nadu. This is my email ID. If you want, you can later contact me also. So why I have chosen this topic, I mean that the topic, the field of translation is, already I have got an experience of teaching translation studies paper in PSD College of Arts and Science. For 10 years, I was in self-financing section. So while I was there, I was the head of the Department of English of PG. So it is an autonomous college. So we had the privilege of introducing new papers. So, we had a paper entitled Advanced Aspects of Translation Studies. So there we used to give the students some theories basically, and then we move on to practical sections also. So this experience, I was actually teaching. I was teaching the same paper along with my research guide, Dr. Jayendashri Balakrishnan. She is a retired professor now. We both together, we taught this paper to the PG students, and it was totally a grand success, I must say, because everybody liked the paper, and it was even applicable to our lives also. Even I started translating after the experience of teaching the PG students. I started translating many poems and such things from the experience I have received as a teacher. So this is my idea. So 2 days, I think I'm going to share my views with you all. So this is being the first day. I'm going to give you the basic concepts of translation. So translation, what is translation? We always have an idea that translation is from one language to another. But basically, translation means from one medium to another. For example, whatever you have in your mind, that is thought process. So that is actually a kind of abstract idea. Okay, so whatever you think, nobody knows, but when you start speaking, that becomes spoken medium. So one medium to another. So even in exams, that's what we see. The students, what they do is, we teach a poem like Robert Frost, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. But students do not write the same poem that they do not reproduce in the examination. They write in the form of prose, okay, essays. So essays or paragraphs or one-word questions. So that is again a kind of translation. Whatever they learn in the form of poem, with all those figures of speech, everything, when they write, it becomes prose piece. So from poem to prose to poem, or novel to some other form, genre, everything comes under translation. So what is translation, and what are the fundamental concepts? Okay, that we are going to discuss today. definitions. There are various definitions. There is no single definition for translation because translation has got a long history since the ancient times. So it has got so many definitions based on the views of the translators, writers, everybody. So we should know the base of translation, many definitions, but I'm not going to give every definition. I will be giving you only the most important ones, okay? And different views about translation. Many are using it for a particular purpose. I said, I'm using it for teaching purpose. Then I started translating. So different views about translation. So that we are going to take one or two views and we are going to discuss that. Then is it a science or an art? Always a question arises. Is it a science? Is it like doing chemistry practicals? Okay, take a beaker, pour this much of acid, you mix it. Is it like that? You have translation tools, okay? You are going to translate it. Is it science? Like science? Are we going step by step? Or is it art? Art doesn't have any rules, like you don't need to follow the rules you apply in practical sessions, So is it a science or art? There's always a question mark. Then why do we need translation? Why do humans need translation? Okay, you don't find translation in the animal world. They have some sound system. They communicate easily. But when it comes to humans, from the question itself, we can understand the answer. Humans only. Because we need to communicate. We need to have a better communication, right? We can't make noises. We can't make always gestures. So we need a kind of like language. So translation, why do humans need translation? And the purpose and the history. What is the history? Just a simple history I would like to give you. Then when is translation to be done? Why should we do? When is to be done? So the context, what are the contexts? Okay, not always we have to do translation, but there are some specific contexts where we are applying translation. So when we take as academicians, we go on to the two contexts, European and Indian context, okay? And how is it to be done? Okay, these are the things, overall views about translation. How is it to be done? Okay, is it okay if I do like this? Directly, word for word or sense for sense, what is it? So how is it to be done? So there are some theories-based ideas, pragmatic, practical approach, okay? And machine translation. So we are going to have a kind of discussion over this. And finally, as teachers, how can we make use of translation in our classroom? That is practical translation. It's very interesting. Translation is unlike any other subject. It's very like any other discipline. It's very interesting, and you will be happy to know that different new things are appearing. So all those things are very interesting for the students as well as for the teachers. Okay, we are going to have a discussion overall view today. If you have any questions, you can just type in the chat box, or finally I can answer your questions. It's a kind of discussion. It is not that I know everything and I'm just giving you, I'm very authentic about everything, but this is my views. These are my views I'm sharing, and if you have any difference of opinion, most welcome, you can share. Okay, you can ask questions. Okay, so what is translation? We just take the author, Anthony Burgess. So he is a current author. He is an English author. He is a author of Clockwork Orange, the novel Clockwork Orange. So what he says is translation is not a matter of words only. It is not taking some words from a particular language, say for English. You are taking some words in English and you are translating it into Tamil or in your mother tongue, whatever it is. So what happens here? It is not a matter of words alone. It is actually translating the culture. Without knowing the culture of English people, I can't translate their novel or their poems or whatever it is. Even their words I can't translate. So what this author feels is translation is translating the culture also. If I am translating something from Tamil to English or from Hindi to English, I must translate the culture also, not simply the words alone. So that is what is his views. And Alberto Manguel is a French translator. He's a translator. He used to translate from French to English, English to French and Spanish also. So what he says is there is no such thing called translator separately. Every reader is a translator. While you are reading something, for example, if you are reading a novel in English, automatically you are translating what is there in the novel into your mother tongue and then you understand. Or you can even compare it. So when you come across a scene and you come across a situation in a novel, you immediately compare the idea with what you had read in your mother tongue or in any other literature, comparative literature. So every reader, every ideal reader is a translator. It is not like just skimming and scanning of the novel. It is like reading a novel. So every translator, every reader is a translator. There's no specific person called translator. So all of us are translators. If you really enjoy reading a novel, even if you read a novel in your mother tongue, what you're doing, you're reading a novel that is in the print medium, right? Then what you're doing, you're actually visually imagining the situation. If there is a kind of description in the novel, immediately you think of the visual description, maybe about Switzerland, Alps, a mountain. Immediately you think of Alps mountain that you have seen in the movies. That is again a kind of translation. So what he says is every reader is a translator, and he actually opens the novel, he rips it and he removes the skin and he reads, he enjoys it, he takes it into his heart. That's what is his view. And coming to the important person, okay, P.B. Shelley, the teachers of English literature. Am I audible? Am I audible? Is it okay? Okay. So the teachers of English literature might be very much aware of Shelley, Defense of Poetry. In his Defense of Poetry, what he says is any query? Raised hand. Please move this window away from. Is it for me? No? Chat box.
You're audible, ma'am.
Anything specific for me?
You're audible, ma'am. You can.
Okay, shall I continue?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So when it comes to Shelley, Shelley is totally against translation. What he, though he had translated some of the works, he was not able to understand the translation. He said what he thought is, it is like he is giving it's a kind of a metaphor here, to cast a violet into a crucible. Crucible is something hot, okay, like a vessel, hot vessel. In that vessel, hot vessel, you are putting a flower, violet. Violet is the name of a flower, you all know, right? So violet, he says translation is like putting a violet, okay, violet flower into a crucible, a hot vessel. What will happen to it? You will have the content. What is the content? The flower will be there, but the beauty of the flower, the soul of the flower, the color of the flower, everything will vanish. So that is what is translation. So when you are translating a poem from one particular language to another, what happens, there is some content. You are giving the content. What is there in the poem you are translating, but you can't translate the soul of the original poet. Okay, that's what is the idea of Shelley. He was totally against translation. But when you talk about views, you have to talk about both the positive and negative views. So everyone has got his or her own views about translation. Okay. I'm not able to. Okay. So translation, why do we need it? What is speciality of translation? Do we really need it? That's a question here. Okay, raised here. Now, these are the views I would like to share with you. Translation is innovative and creative. Okay, remove all the negative ideas. Okay, translation is innovative and creative. So you are creating something new from one particular language to another. You are creating something new, and it helps as teachers of English language and literature. It helps us to approach literature in a dynamic way. Okay, so we are able to, like, you take a particular novel, you take a poem, then you are able to compare it with somebody. So whenever I teach Shelley in my classroom, I always make a reference to Mahakavi Bharadiyar. I cannot simply say, because Bharadiyar is also a revolutionary spirit, and Shelley is also like, he is a very like reformative spirit. He has got that spirit. So when you teach an English poet, automatically it comes to your mind that you have to make a reference to Bharatiyar because you find the spirit there. So it is like a dynamic way. And when you teach like that, students are able to understand it better. Okay. And it introduces new writers from other landscapes. So only through translation we are able to understand many writers from across the globe. Okay, even if you take India for that matter, if you want to know what is there in Gujarati literature or in Marathi literature or in any other literature, how do you know? You can't read Gujarati, you can't read anything in Gujarati, anything in Malayalam, anything in Kannada. So only in Tamil you can read, right? So how do we understand the greatness of other literature? Only through translation, and it erases the borders between disciplines. It just goes beyond, no borders. Every country has a border, but translation doesn't have a border. It goes beyond the border. So it goes to other disciplines also. As I told you already, you talk about language, so it is related to linguistics, and it is related to culture studies. It is related to semiotics. There are so many other fields are related to translation. So translation is not a single entity. It has got connection with all the other disciplines. Okay, when you teach the modern criticism, linguistic criticism, deconstruction, everything, for everything you need translation. Translation is a part of it. It is connected to it. And the translation revitalizes the study of literature. So you are able to revitalize. You are able to connect yourself with somebody. Okay, when Shakespeare writes something, okay, when you are teaching Shakespeare, he belongs to 16th century. Then you are revitalizing, where you are giving a lifetime example and you are connecting Shakespeare with this lifetime example. So you are revitalizing the study of literature and the humanities. And it is an act of interpretation. It actually adds interpretation also and comparative studies also. And translation guarantees the survival of our civilization. So we are able to understand how we had a long history of translation, how we lived. Everything is possible only through translation. Even history was actually written by so many historians, but those history, those kind of facts were in different languages, and they had been translated into our mother tongue or in a common language. Even if you take the epics of our country, Mahabharata and Ramayana, they were originally written in Sanskrit. So if there is no translation at all, we would not have known what is there in Mahabharata and Ramayana. So people translated it into many languages. So translation is very important. Okay, this is a kind of like question to all of you. The many teachers are there. Okay, so can you identify these writers? Can anyone? I can just give you a clue. They are Russian writers. Okay, so can anyone identify this? Identify these writers? You can type in the chat box. Any idea here? I think this you can say because Bama, she's Bama, Dalit writer, right? And can you just say? Can you identify? Dear participants? Yes. Okay. I'll just tell you. This is Dostoevsky, Russian writer. So these Russian writers wrote originally in Russian language. But we talk about them, we know about their novels only because of English translation. Dostoevsky, this is Leo Tolstoy, this is Anton Chekhov. Many of his famous short stories, The Grief, we always teach in our part 2 English classes, Grief. And this is a Japanese writer, Kuroshami, some name, I'll just tell you the name later. And she has done a wonderful novel in Japanese language, and that is actually translated into, I think, 52 languages, and we have one in Tamil and English. In English, it is known as Totoshan. The name of the novel is Totoshan, and in Tamil, we call it Janalil Sirumi. It talks about the drawbacks of the present education system. Okay, so this novel was written, the setting was during the Second World War. So how the education system was there in Japanese. She has beautifully narrated, and I have the book with me. It's wonderful. I have the pictures in the following slides. Okay, and he is Sharan Kumar Limbale. He is a Marathi Dalit writer. So he is actually one of the foremost Dalit writers of Marathi. So you all know that when you talk about Dalit literature, we always start with Maharashtra, because Maharashtra is a pioneer in Dalit writing, and he is currently he is Sharan Kumar Limbale is publishing novels, and he is very famous. So we don't know, okay, but he writes only in his mother tongue. Okay, how do we know? See, you can find the novel The Outcast. The Outcast is in translation. He never translated. Somebody who knew Marathi and English, they translated. Okay, and Bama is again, she is a Tamil Dalit writer. Okay, Bama wrote originally in Tamil language, but we know, like, you can see the title Karukku. It's translated by Lakshmi Holmstrom. So how do we know these people? Only through translation. She is a very popular writer, activist, social activist, Mahashweta Devi. She is a West Bengali writer. Even her novels have been translated into many languages, and in English, many are doing research on Mahashweta Devi. So only through translation, I'm just giving you only a tip of an iceberg. There are lots and lots of writers. I'm just giving you the names of these writers. Okay, okay. The why and for who of translation determine the how of it. Now I told you, know, why should we do translation? That's very important question. Why are we doing translation? Okay, for whom? Who's the target audience? Am I doing it for my students, or am I doing it for school students, even in students, school students or college students, or am I doing it for public? Okay, for everyone. So that decides the process of translation. Okay, if you are taking a translation work, is it for school students, then your choice of word should be different. Okay, if it is for higher education, the students of higher education, that is different. If it is for a general public, then it is different. Then I have to change my process, my views, I mean the process, the tools of translation. So translation, now we talk about, when we say translation, we talk about from one language to another, but actually it means from one medium to another. But when it comes to teaching and the translation that we see today, it means from one language to another. So what are the general concepts and myths about understanding the translation? Okay, some particular myth is there. Okay, first is we always this, when you have translation as a paper in your college, you have to make a mention of the myth, Tower of Babel myth. Okay, it's a myth is like it's not, we are not sure. It is from taken from the Bible. So it is from the Genesis, 11th book of Genesis, from the Bible. So according to it, it means that people wanted to, there was a great flood, okay, during that time, and people wanted to move towards western side. And when they came, they wanted to build a big city. Okay, the people of the eastern side, they wanted to move, and they wanted to build a big city, and they wanted to build a tower that can even reach the heaven. Okay, they wanted to build it. So you can see the tower here, Babel Tower, we always say. So many people started building it, and you know, it was growing very like fast. And God was looking at the tower from heaven, and he was very much like horrified at the pride of human beings. Okay, you want to build a tower, that's okay, but you want to reach the heaven is it's not okay. Okay, it's like pride. So God wanted to stop it. It's a myth only. It's like myth means not real. May be real, may not be real. It's a kind of story. So God wanted to stop it. So what he did is, he never did anything special. He went down and he was giving different languages to different people. Okay, confuse the speech of people. Only if you have same language, you can communicate. So you want to build a tower, high tower. Okay, so you should have proper communication among the builders. But what God did is, he gave multiple languages. People of one particular community or one section, they spoke a different language, and somebody spoke a different language, so they couldn't communicate with each other. So the Tower of Babel could not be completed. It stopped because of the multiplicity of languages. This is actually kind of a little bit humorous, and at the same time, you can't believe it. But what else can give us the reason for the multiple languages across the world? Even if you take India, lots and lots of languages. Why can't it be the same language? Why did people start speaking same language? We had different languages. Even if you just travel from here to Kerala, you can't speak your mother tongue. They can understand, that's different. But it's very tough for us to speak in their language. If you go to North India, you have to speak in Hindi. So why these many languages? Just take India. India has got these many, more than 1,500 languages, more than 26 official languages. Tamil Nadu speaks Tamil, Karnataka speaks Kannada. So official languages, just think about the whole globe. Okay, so they have their own languages. So this actually, this myth is giving a kind of slight reason for this kind of multiplicity of languages. Okay, and finally what they did is they stopped constructing the tower, and they wanted to have a kind of like try to communicate with each other. Okay, that's why translation came into existence. That is a kind of like a myth, but we are using it, okay, based on assumption. We are using it like how we think about dinosaurs. I don't know, nobody had seen dinosaurs in person, but we assume there must have been a bigger creature which dominated the entire world, even anaconda. Everything is an assumption based on a particular myth. The same way, for translation, this myth is always used as a source. Okay, what does translation means? Trans means across. The term refers to across from one to another. It need not be only with regard to language. Okay, so we always use these terms: source language, target language. So if you are taking two languages, you are translating from one to another. So the first one, original, is source language, and TL is target language. The same way you have source text and target text. For example, if I want to translate a novel like Oliver Twist, Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist. So Oliver Twist is the source text. So if I am translating it into another language, maybe in my mother tongue, okay, it becomes target text. So source text, target text. And there are different types of translation according to the purpose. For example, if I want to translate a poem, then I can't simply use the same technique that I'm using for novel. So I must be aware of the other concepts of poem. So types of translation and types of theories. Okay, it depends upon the purpose of your translation and interpreting the verbal sign. And more than language to language, you are able to interpret the sign. What is a sign? A symbol. For example, if Indian flag is here, if Indian flag is shown, no sentences, no words, what will you understand? It represents India. If you find a dove, okay, white dove, pigeon, then what will you say? It's meant for peace. So these signs, symbols, they communicate something even without words. The symbols themselves communicate something to you. That's what we find in the poems of W.B. Yeats. W.B. Yeats is known as a symbolist because he never believed in lengthy sentences, words. He uses symbols. Instead of giving, I want peace, I want everybody to be safe, I want my country to be happy, peaceful situation. Instead of saying that, you can show a white pigeon. Okay, the symbol, it includes everything. Okay, so interpreting verbal sign is another. It belongs to linguistic theory, another part of translation. Okay, so translating versus interpreting. Translating is simply translating what is there. Interpretation is you are adding more to it. Okay, interpreting, that we will see in the forthcoming slides. Okay, then I told you source language, target language. Then there are three types of translation possible: intralingual, interlingual, intersemiotic translation. Then this is very common. I'm not going for all the types of translation because many theorists gave many types of translation, but whatever is applicable to us and whatever we can teach to our students, that I'm using here. Okay, translation as language learning. Even for learning a language, translation is very helpful. Okay, contrastive linguistics. Linguistics means study of a language. Contrastive. So when you take Tamil and English, when you are translating, or English to Hindi or English to Gujarati, then what is happening? Contrast. They do different languages. Okay, so contrast. When you study about the system of Gujarati language and system of English, contrastive linguistics. So it's related, translation is related to linguistics also, and comparative. I told you already. So when you are comparing particular person with somebody else. Comparative literature is also a kind of translation. So this is, I'm sorry about the Hindi speaking people, but I'll explain. So this difference in language structure, I have made use of Tamil because Tamil is my mother tongue. So when you take a sentence in English, the boy wrote a letter, very simple sentence, okay? The boy is a subject, wrote is a verb, a letter is a object. Okay, this is the structure of English language. So the sentence pattern is SVO. But when you are translating this sentence into Tamil, okay, what happens? The boy, the subject is here, Andha Chiruvan. Okay, what happens here? Instead of verb, okay, we don't say Andha Chiruvan eluthinan oru kadidam. That's a wrong usage. Okay, Andha Chiruvan oru kadidam eluthinan. Okay, so what happens here? The structure changes. I told you, contrastive linguistics. So here you find English, the structure of English is different from structure of Tamil, where you find SOV pattern, not SVO pattern. So while you are translating this particular sentence, you shouldn't be worried about the original structure, because in English, the structure is SVO. Not in Tamil. The sentence pattern in Tamil is SOV. Most of the Indian languages have SOV pattern. So if we are translating anything in English into any of the Indian languages, then it becomes, okay, change of pattern. So language structure changes, okay. So I told you already, we are going to focus on only these kind of methods of translation. Okay, I already told you, intralingual, interlingual, intersemiotics translation. Then another theorist, that is writer translator Dryden, John Dryden, gave another group of set of words. Okay, because he himself was a translator. Okay, so metaphrase, paraphrase, and imitation. Then you take literary translation and non-literary translation. Different types of methods are available for literary translation, that is translation of literature, poems or prose. Then non-literary scientific translation. Okay, then oral and written translation. You have oral translation also. I'll show you examples. Oral translation and written. Written translation is that what you see. You have Anton Chekhov's short story from Russian to English. Okay, that is written, but oral is also there. Then equivalence. What is equivalence? I'll explain. So we need the same, like I told you, this structure is varying. So you have to go for something closer to the original. That is equivalence. We are going to have a discussion on this. Okay, don't be worried. So Roman Jakobson is one of the theorists. Look at the year 1959. When he gave theories, okay, he was also a translator. And see, since ancient times, if you are the teachers or students of literature, you must be knowing in our Renaissance, that's a starting point of your literature. Okay, in social history of England, in Renaissance, what is the very predominant point? Translation, right? Okay, when Constantinople fell into the hands of Turks, okay, the scholars fled to Italy. So Italy was the hub of learning. So there started translation. They started translating the classical writings into different languages. So even for Renaissance, translation is the starting point. So from then onwards till today, even after so many years, you will have translation, the theories of translation, because people keep translating. So everyone is coming out with his or her view. So Roman Jakobson is one of the famous theorists. When you teach translation studies, you have to make a mention of his theories. Okay, so here you find the three terms given by Roman Jakobson. Intralingual. So intra means within a language. So I told you initially, when a student has to write about a poem, he doesn't write poem again. He rephrases it. He is giving it in the form of prose. So poetry to prose. Or sometimes, you are rephrasing. Somebody is telling something and the people are not able to understand. You reword it. So that is intralingual. Within the same language. In the same language, you are trying to explain it. That is rewording or paraphrasing or summarizing. Okay, that is intralingual. Then interlingual, as we know, that is from one language to another. Lingua means language, from one language to another language. So intra is inside a particular language, and inter means from one to another, rewriting a text into another language. Okay. What is intersemiotic? I told you already. Semiotic means signs, symbols. You are able to deduct something from the symbol. So intersemiotic means you are able to see some symbol and you are giving it in the form of oral or written communication. Okay, I'll give you an example. Very commonly we are using it in our day-to-day life. You can find it here. See, this is an example for intersemiotic translation. So you can find all this that we normally use when you are using WhatsApp, even in Facebook or in any other social media. We come across these symbols, okay? And many times I was very scared of using it because what the symbol means, I don't know. So I had to do a study. I had to go to the Google. I was just checking at the, because if I want to send some kind of like, and I was sending a symbol on some 2 days ago. It means that it is kissing, it seems. I don't know. Then I had to do it again, read it again. So I have to be very, very careful with the interpretation of this symbol. So you can find, see, laughing. So what's the difference between this laughing and this laughing? You can find eyes down is eyes, straight forward. Okay. So you can find this eyebrows. Okay. Love symbol here. There are lots. Grinning. It's not like laughing is different from grinning. Okay. It's like very like ridiculously you are doing. Okay. This is actually a kind of like a funny thing. All those things, and your tears. Okay. This is like you don't like it. So we are using these symbols, okay, instead of oral communication, oral comments, we are saying, I'm happy. So you can just send this. So the person who receives the symbol will understand that you are very happy about this message. So this is intersemiotic translation, okay. So coming to the theory of John Dryden. John Dryden, you all know, he's a neoclassical writer, okay, John Dryden, satirist. And he was actually Augustan poet, okay, Restoration period. So he was translating the classics into English, Ovid's, Horace, the classics of Greek and Latin into English. So while he was translating, he came across many problems as a translator. But we know Dryden only as a writer. Okay, he wrote All for Love dramas and poetry. But when he was a translator, he came across so many difficulties or problems while doing translation. So he gave three kinds of ideas. What are they? Metaphrase. Metaphrase is simply taking the word to word. For example, boy, payan, letter, okay, kadidam. So that is word to word. So if you do that, okay, so in some places it's okay, but sometimes it will go wrong. So metaphrase is simply word for word translation. Okay, word for word, line for line. So it happens from one language to another. Okay, paraphrase. Paraphrase is, as I told you already, a poem is that you are not able to reproduce a poem in a poetic way in Tamil. Okay, say for example, stopping by woods on a snowy evening. So when you want to write it, okay, reproduce it, you can't reproduce exactly the same line. So what you are doing, you are giving the paraphrase of it. Okay, what is the content of it you are giving? Okay, that is paraphrase. From the name itself, you can understand. Normally, we give essays to students, right? There is a poem and you are giving an essay. That is a paraphrase. This is a poem. Okay, poem is a different genre and prose is another genre. Okay, that is paraphrase. Then third one is imitation. So what is imitation? You just read the entire text, okay, source text, then you imitate. You imitate means you simply reproduce it in your own way. It's another type of creation. Imitation is he can just take the content, he can take everything and he can do it on his own. That is totally like recreation. So this is what happened when Tagore translated his own works from Bengali to English. So when somebody asked him what were the problems, he said, I didn't know because I created original Bengali poems, Gitanjali, collection of poems for which he was awarded Nobel Prize for Literature. So originally he wrote everything in 108 verses in Bengali, his mother tongue. Then nobody knew except the Bengalis. Then he himself translated it into English for the purpose of reaching global audience. If I am writing in Tamil, only my Tamil people will understand. The people of Tamil Nadu will understand. What about my English writings? Then it will reach everybody, right? So he translated the poems, his own poems into English for the purpose of reaching the global audience, and it reached the global audience. So he was awarded Nobel Prize for Literature. So when he translated the poems, if you can have access to original Bengali poems, we can't of course read, but original Bengali poems are poetic. It was poetic in nature, but if you read English Gitanjali, it was in prose form. It's not in poetic form. It's almost like prose pieces, but very poetic. Figures of speech are that, but very very much prose, not poetic. So he himself translated his poetic verses from Bengali into English in a prose way. It's an imitation. Okay, it is not that paraphrase. It's imitation because he himself was the creator of the original Bengali writing and the translation. So 3 points that John Dryden says, and John Dryden, he opted for the third one, imitation. He liked only the third one, imitation. He doesn't approve of metaphrase or paraphrase. Okay, I told you already, literary and non-literary. What is literary? Literary means whatever belongs to the category literature. Poetry, prose, essay, short story, drama, novel, everything belongs to literature. I'll tell you why it's literature. And other writings are informative. They don't belong to literature. They have some text. Okay, they are non-literary. For example, advertisement. And you can translate advertisement. Okay, technical, some technical writings, even in when you're going for a document. Okay, when you're registering a land, document is a technical writing. Scientific writing, news is there. Okay, legal writing. Okay, scientific. So I told you, take a beaker, pour 3 ounces of water, whatever it is. So that is scientific. Okay, you can translate very well into your mother tongue, very easy, because the sentence structure is very simple. Okay, but in literary translation it is not so. Okay, so you must know the difference between literary and non-literary translation. This part is only to pass on the information. What is that in English? You want to know even the laws. Okay, the laws of India. Articles, we call them articles of India, articles 365. What is that originally in English? Because Englishmen created that. But you want a person belonging to Tamil Nadu, a layman, he wants to know. So it has to be translated. Only what is the content? Okay, the content is this. Okay, so that is legal translation. So there are differences. And text, what kind of text you are translating? Informative. So what is information? I told you these legal text, okay, scientific text, they are passing on only information. So information has to reach others. So for that purpose you are translating. I told you the purpose of translation. Informative means reference work, report, lecture, operating instructions in computer tutorials you find. Open this, press F1 for help, something like that, you know. So that is kind of operating instructions. And tourist brochure, when you want to go to a country, you're given a brochure. Okay, that is a kind of passing on information. What are the places you have to go and visit? So that is the tourist brochure. Then this comes under informative official speech. Okay, when you go for giving an official welcome speech, that is like, it's like already there's a template. You have to stick on to that template. That is official speech. Okay, when it comes to expressive, what is there in literature? Literature is not for information. Literature is for expressing emotions. Okay, when you read the poem of Shelley, it is not informing you something. It is expressing the soul of the poet. Okay, expressive part of the text. You find poem, play, biography, whatever it is. So they come under expressive part of it. Emotions are there. It is unlike these works. They don't have emotions. If you are just translating a lecture, if you are giving operating instruction, open Windows XP, you go to this control panel, you switch on this, switch off. Everything is No emotions in that. But when it comes to the poems, novels, essays, they contain lot of emotions. Okay, that can't be uh, fully translated. Okay, the same way you have operative. You have some operative. That is, you want to give a kind of translation. Because of that, there should be some reaction. For example, electoral speeches like canvassing. So what are they giving? They're giving a speech, and because of the speech, people are able to vote. They give so many promises, either true or false promises, whatever it is. They give a speech. Sometimes these speeches are being translated by others into other languages so that it can reach across. For example, if take a Prime Minister of India, he speaks in Hindi. 100% he doesn't speak in English. Even if he speaks in English, most of our people won't understand. Many are like illiterates in our country. So he speaks in Hindi. So what happens? There is a translation of his speech into the regional languages, maybe in Tamil or in Telugu or Kannada. So this is actually a kind of like to reach and to react. As when it comes to Corona period, he wanted us to be safe. Okay, we wanted the people to be safe, and he wanted us to follow some instructions. So those instructions were given by him in his language, Hindi, and we got it. We got instruction through translation, and we reacted to it. Whatever he said, we reacted to it. So that is operative. So this is the third type of text. So three types of text. Texts have different functions. All the texts can't have the same function. So translation can't be the same. Depending upon the function of text, we have to do translation differently. So this is a translation process. Source language is here. Okay, target language is here. Everywhere, what is to be maintained? Meaning. Meaning should not be lost. If somebody is saying something good, and in translation, if you are giving something bad, then the entire communication system will be spoiled, and it will be like adverse. There will be adverse effect. So meaning should not be lost. If you are translating Dostoevsky's novels, maybe you can't bring in all the terms that you are using in Russian language, because Russian language will have their own kind of idioms, phrases, everything. But the meaning can be retold. They can be taken, observed, understood, and it can be retold by the translator. So what is very predominant here in this picture is meaning, without spoiling the meaning. Meaning should not be changed. Then it is going to be a unfaithful translation. So this is the process. Meaning, discuss. First you understand, okay, then you create meaning, then you take the target language, you take some sentences or structures that can go with the original one, then you translate without spoiling the meaning. So this is the entire translation project. Okay, I talked about oral translation. So what is oral translations? Required at conferences. Sometimes, when you, for example, if I'm speaking in English and you want to know the Tamil version of it, machine can do it. So there are some machines, and you can have the machines as like what to say, the kind of like ear. You can have it in your ear, and you can listen to it. You can switch on. Okay, there are some options whether you want to listen to the speech in Tamil or in Telugu. That happens in tourist places. When you go to Russia, Czechoslovakia, European countries, they speak in their language, but you may not understand. So the guides, they will give us some kind of like this technical things. You can have it around your ear, and like your earphone. You can have it, and you can just switch on the. There will be options whether you can listen to it in. For Indians, there are only two options. One is Hindi or English. So if you can listen to it in Hindi, you can switch on the button Hindi, and you can have the earphones. Whatever he speaks, he might be speaking in his mother tongue. Okay, and we will have the same translation. It's already like recorded only. The thing is, the script is already ready. So you will be listening to it. So it's required at conferences, meetings, parliaments. So in Indian Parliament, you will be like, you must have seen people from different states of India. So you can't say everybody knows English or everybody knows all the languages. So these languages should be translated. The speeches have to be translated. So there are different types in oral translation. Consecutive interpreting. So when somebody is speaking within the time limit of 5 to 10 minutes or 15 minutes, somebody else will translate. That happens in this canvassing during the time of election. Okay, the Hindi speaking people, when they come to Tamil Nadu, they will speak in Hindi, somebody else will translate it into English, Tamil or Malayalam, the regional languages. So that is known as consecutive interpreting. There is one another short thing is known as parroting, that is immediately, but sentence by sentence. One sentence, you are giving translation on the spot. Okay, that is parroting. Okay, then next is another type of translation is simultaneous interpretation, that is oral translation. Simultaneous interpretation, that is the speech is going on, there is no like a break or something like that. You can listen to the translation immediately. That happens in Parliament. Okay, when the speaker is giving the speech, you have the headphone, and you are able to get the translation in your, and you have options. You can click on the options and you can listen to that speech in the particular language through headphones. Okay, so interpretation is again rough translation. It's kind of rough translation that's very much even today used, and it is content based. There's no emotions, nothing. What is the content of that speech that is being translated into your language, and what is involved in this translation? Not humans, machine translation. So you call it computer aided translation. That is again a part of translation studies paper. Okay, so this is an example I would like to give, okay, for consecutive interpretation. Recently, in December 2009, when Rahul Gandhi he was elected as MP in Malappuram, Kerala. Okay, he wanted to give a speech, but he gave the speech in Hindi. He wanted to give a speech to the people of Malappuram, Kerala. So they know only Malayalam, right? So he wanted somebody to translate. So he was just asking the people, the crowd. Immediately a girl, Safa, a 12th standard student in Malappuram, she came on stage. She never prepared. She never thought that she would be invited. So she went up to the stage and she started translating whatever Rahul Gandhi was speaking in Hindi into Malayalam within 2 minutes or 10 minutes slot. So it was appreciated by Rahul Gandhi. He was speaking in Hindi. This girl was speaking in Malayalam, translating it into Malayalam. This is also on the spot translation. Okay, it was in recently December 2009. So this needs lot of skill. I told you already, only machines can do it. Okay, you have to listen to the structure, and this is in front of everybody, open meeting. If anything goes wrong, the girl will get caught. Okay, so she took a kind of like a rare adventure, and she succeeded in it. Okay, this is a different thing. I want you to understand that we think that translation is something there that we are translating from one language to another, one text to another. There are some translations that we can even see in our day-to-day life, and this is a Parliament. You can find the Prime Minister hearing a headphone, okay, and the former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, and you can find the members of the Parliament. Some of them may be having the earphones; they want to listen to it. Some of them they are not, may not. Maybe they can understand the language. One more plus point about the earphones is the clarity of speech. They won't have any other noise. So for two purposes, they have the earphone. So normally, when you look at the people in the Parliament, some might be thinking, are they listening to music? No, they are actually, it's kind of translation going on. If somebody is speaking in Tamil, it will be translated into Hindi or whichever language they choose. So in our Parliament, it's happening. Okay, this is because of machine translation. So what is the process of translation? It's by NIDA. NIDA is another person you can't just leave away when you talk about translation. Eugene NIDA in 1969. So what he says is, you have the source language. So you are analyzing it, okay, and it becomes, that analysis becomes X. Then you, in a very like, not a systematic way, in a zigzag way, in a confused way, you're transferring it into a kind of another language, that is Y. Then from there, you just do it very like formally, you make it very effectively, restructuring according to the other language, okay, receptor language. So, say for, I'll give you example for this, okay, restructuring, and it goes into receptor language. This is what is a process of translation given by NIDA in 1969. Let me explain this with an example. So here, source language, Maybe say for example, Tamil. I want to translate something from Tamil to English. Very simple. You take vanakkam. So vanakkam is actually for what purpose we are doing? We are actually greeting, right? It's for kind of like when you meet somebody for first time, you are able to say something, okay? Maryade nimittam andu parimariyal. You want to exchange some kind of communication, okay? So you say vanakkam in Tamil, okay? Do we have vanakkam in English? No. So what happens, you take that, the translator. So that is you are translating a text in Tamil to English. Okay. So there it comes vanakkam. It starts with vanakkam. Now, how will you translate? This is a source language. So it is transferred to something. You understand that it is greetings. Okay. You want to greet somebody. So in target language, you don't have vanakkam. Target language is English. So in English, you don't have vanakkam. So what you say, then you understand to whom it is said. For us in Tamil, for everyone we can say vanakkam. Even for small children we can say vanakkam. Okay. Even the students can tell the greet the teachers with vanakkam. Nothing wrong in it. But in English, you can't just simply go say hello, hi. But in European context, they say hello, hi to teachers. But it depends. In informal situations, they say hello, hi. Okay. And good morning or good noon, evening, depending upon the time. They have time, good morning, good night. Okay, hi, good night, good noon. So they greet in that way. Okay, so one vanakkam has got these many meanings here. And another thing I would like to say here is, I have seen many people translating this good morning into Tamil. How do they say? Kalai vanakkam. Okay, there is nothing known as Kalai vanakkam in Tamil. We have only vanakkam. I have seen many people sending messages. Kalai vanakkam, Madiya vanakkam, Iravu vanakkam, Malai vanakkam. All those things are word for word translation of good morning, good noon, good evening, good night. Only English people have that kind of culture that they say good morning. For us, only vanakkam. Vanakkam is there is no time for vanakkam. Even in the morning, vanakkam only. Night also, vanakkam. If you want to wish somebody, you can say vanakkam. Okay, no need to give kind of like Kalai vanakkam, Madiya vanakkam. So you have to be, as a translator, you have to be very careful with these kind of structures. Okay. Then coming to the history, when we talk about the history, we always make a mention of Bible translation. Okay. Bible was the one which was translated, which is still being translated into many languages, and more than 3,000 languages it has been translated across the world. So originally it was in Hebrew language, then it was translated into Latin, then from Latin to English. So we all, the teachers of English literature, we know about the different versions, Tyndale's versions, Coverdale's versions, okay, and John Wycliffe's version during the time of Reformation in England. Do you remember? So all those type of translation, and finally there are a lot of renderings. Many are translating Bible, okay, and you must remember in France, Etienne Dolet, translator, he wanted to translate something from Plato, Plato's writing. He, for something at all, the word, the phrase which exactly meant something at all, he translated as nothing at all. For that, he was burnt at stake. He was executed and burnt at stake only for the crime that he translated something at all to nothing at all. Now you see many translations, very nonsensical translation, nobody is bothered. But initially, they were very careful about translation, especially with regard to Bible, because they think that Bible can't be, it's a God's message. It can't be translated into other languages. Even if it is translated, the meaning, whatever is the meaning in the original, should not be slightly changed. That is, adaptation is not possible. As Titan said, imitation can't be possible. So you have to stick on to the original word. So finally, in 1611, King James gave the authorized version of the Bible, and then later there came lot of renderings of Bible in various languages. So here you can find the original Bibles, that is Vespasian Psalter, in the walls of the churches earlier. Like we have the inscriptions on stones in temples. Okay, Kalvetikal. The same way they had this Bible inscriptions on the walls of the churches, Gothic churches. Okay, so that's the starting point of translation in the European context. Coming to English, I mean Indian context. So India, you all know. See, I have given you only some languages, lot of languages in India. So when you take the translation period of India, you can divide it into 3 periods. One is before Englishman came into India, that is pre-colonial, then colonial during Englishman's period, then post-colonial after Englishman left. So you can take this kind of translations. Okay, before Englishman came to India, English ruler came to India, we had only Sanskrit as a language, upper class language. That's why the epics of India had been written in Mahabharata and Ramayana. I mean, in Sanskrit, Mahabharata and Ramayana were written in Sanskrit. Okay, then later they were translated into many other Indian languages. So originally, Sanskrit was a language. It was used by the upper class people. Okay, the non-upper class people were not given access to that language. Only those people can learn Sanskrit. And recently I read in Sanskrit there are no women poets. In Sanskrit literature, you can find that there are no women poets. Whereas if you take Tamil literature, even in Sangakalam, that is some 2000 years ago, there were 47 Tamil poets. Avayar, fine, there are different Avayas, okay, so many with so many names. So in Tamil, women were given, women were allowed to write poetry, but in Sanskrit was meant for upper class men. Okay, upper class men. So they only learned Sanskrit, they only wrote literature. Later on, when Buddha came like when Siddhartha became Buddha, he wanted to reach everyone, not only the upper class. He wanted to reach everyone. So his preachings were translated, his preachings were written in Pali and Prakriti. So Pali and Prakriti were the languages used by the non-upper class people of that time. I'm talking about the pre-colonial. So even then we didn't have any chance, like only Sanskrit was dominating, and most of literature. That's why you find Kalidasa, Abhijana Sakuntalam, all this great poetry, Mahabharata, Ramayana, whatever it is, everything is originally in Sanskrit. Okay, then you know what happened. This was a situation of pre-colonial period. Then Vedas, Upanishads, everything was in Sanskrit. Then when Englishman came to India, he wanted a common language. So we had this English. Okay, he introduced English in schools and colleges everywhere. So it was mandatory that you have to study in English medium in those days, because he wanted to communicate. The ruler wanted to communicate with the people of India. The people of India had different languages. Okay, and you know what happened? Englishmen translated something from India to English. Like Tirukkural was taken from India to England. Geo Pope is an Irish priest. He translated Tirukkural into English. There were many translations across the country. Englishmen took whatever was good in India into his language. That was his his technique. Okay, and during colonial period, English became the common language. Then after he left, now we have English as a common medium. Because of the influence of English medium schools, now we are teaching English, and English becomes a global language, because you want to go across the globe and you want to use a common language. So English is helping us. Even in India, if you go to other states, you are using English. Okay, English becomes a bridge. So this is the situation of translation in Indian context. And nowadays you find many movies are translated into Tamil. So you find all English movies in Tamil, Dinosaurs and Anaconda in Tamil, Narnia in Tamil. Okay, dubbed movies. They are dubbed into your mother tongue. And sometimes you can even have in this English movie channels, you know, you find all this subtitling. Okay, whatever they talk, you have subtitling. So if you can't follow the spoken medium of the characters, you can read the subtitling. You can same language, English to English or Russian to English, subtitling will be going on. So these are all the developments in the field of translation in Indian context. Okay. Okay, today, currently, we have gone to another level, upper level. What is it? We have Google Translate. Okay, so if you just want to type something in Telugu, I can just voice over. I can have the machine, I can voice over. It's in Google, even in your mobile phones, you can do that. Okay, you can give a voice and you can just click that you want it to be translated into English or Telugu, whatever language you can choose, and it will be in that language. But you won't understand what is in the target language. So even without knowing two languages, you can translate. But there is a danger that what is there we don't know, because it's a machine translation. It can give only the content. So for passing on information, you can use Google Translate. It's very common. Every one of us are using. You can type in Tamil, you can translate it into English, or from English to Tamil, in whatever way you want, you can translate. But this is helpful to some extent, okay, on the surface level. If you want to go to a place where it's totally new, it's new to you, and you can't speak their language, and you want to know the way to railway station or place to say, then you can use this Google Translate. That I always use when I go to North India. I can speak only broken Hindi, so I can make use of this Google Translate. I can just go for the basic words, and I'll make use of those words, and I can manage the situation. You can't speak fluently, but to some extent you can make use of this. So I'll always have the mobile phone. So I'll just type enge poganum. So I'll just ask, okay, where to go. Then I'll get the Hindi equivalent. So I can just ask. But I have to be sure that the same is given. We imagine that it is correct. Okay. So this is because of the use of electronic gadgets. Since you have mobile phones, you can carry it very much handy. You can't carry your computer everywhere. So because of mobile phones, advent of technology, you are able to use translation wherever you go. Okay, that's a current scenario. Now coming to literary translation. Okay, literature. Is it possible to translate poetry? Is it possible to translate the novel? Okay, it's like facts versus imagination. Whatever you find in your college brochure, this college started in the year, this particular year, this college has got these many courses, these many departments, that is fact. That is easy to translate. But imagination, how can you translate the imagination of Shelley, Wordsworth, Keats, everybody? It's not possible. They are special, they are unique. Shakespeare, whoever it is, Milton, Dryden. So you can simply give the content. So this is what they have said in this particular poem. Okay, Ode to a Nightingale. This is what is given. He is singing a song towards the nightingale. He looks at the nightingale and he sings a song. So what he says is this: his problems of life. He wants to escape from the realities of life. Okay, this content you can give, but how can you bring the emotion of Keats, how his suffering, okay, his original suffering, he only knows. Okay, this is very impossible to translate poetry. So one Walter says, okay, can you translate music? Okay, music can you translate? You can sing. Okay, you can sing together with the music, but you can't translate music. The same thing. The same way, poetry is what gets lost in translation. Robert Frost. Robert Frost is an American poet. Okay, stopping by on a snowy evening, mending wall. He has written this many poems. So he says poetry is what gets lost in translation. So if you make an attempt to translate poetry, the soul will be lost. This is view like Shelley. He is also against translation. Why poetry is lost? Because look at the views of Wordsworth. Poetry is a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. Okay, so when the poem of Wordsworth is there, it is not simply words. You find the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, and it is emotions recollected in tranquility. When you are cool, when you are sitting. Okay, when he writes a poem on the solitary reaper, he listened to the song of the reaper. After coming home, the sitting and thinking of the song of melodious, melancholic song of the girl, okay, the Scottish girl, he reproduces, he writes a poem. That emotion we can't create in translation. Maybe you can say it's about a girl. She was actually she was cutting with the sickle. She was cutting the crops. That you can say, but you can't write it. That's what is the idea of this, because poetry consists of figures of speech. It is unlike this scientific brochure or any other flyer. It consists of figures of speech. It has got all this metaphor, simile, personification, alliteration, assonance, okay, all hyperbole, lot of things. That is very tough to translate. So translating poetry is not the same as translating the college brochure or any other flyer, okay. And Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound is the person who edited the writings of T.S. Eliot, modern writer Ezra Pound. He talks about three terms. He defines poetry under three categories: logopoeia, phonopoeia, and melopoeia. So logopoeia is words. Poetry consists of words. So that words you can translate. Logo means symbols, language. Okay. Okay. Logopoeia means words that you use. In poetry, what you find, you have words. It's made of words. Then phonopoeia, it means imagery. You have lots of imagery. Okay, and imagery also to some extent you can bring, but there are some difficulties. For example, if you take Spenser's poems, okay, Epithalamion, Prothalamion, he describes in his wedding, they are known as wedding songs. In the wedding songs, he describes the beauty of Thames River and the flowers, okay, different colors of flowers. It's a pictorial poem. It's very tough to translate because we have never seen such a river with beautiful flowers flowing along the river, different colors of flowers and two white swans. It's just, we have never seen because we belong to a dry country. Now we don't have even water in our rivers. So it's very tough to translate the imagery to some extent, stuff. Okay, and melopoeia is sounds of poetry. So we talk about the rhythms, rhyme scheme, okay, all these beats, everything. It's very tough to translate. So he divides poetry under these three sections, and it's very tough to translate because of these things. Okay. So translating emotional poetry. So this is original emotion is lost. That's what I said. Figures of speech is lost. This is the book I specified. Okay, you can find Toto Shan. Janali Lord Sirimi, it's in Tamil and it's in English. It's originally written in Japanese language. It's available in Tamil and English. I have the book, Tamil book. I don't have the English book, but it's a wonderful book. Like a small, it's a from a small girl's point of view, how education should be, how she had education. That small girl happened to be the author of the novel. Okay, and she writes about education of the Japanese country. I mean, during the time of World War II, before World War. After bombing, her school got destructed. So her school is no more. Even the teacher was, the headmaster, principal himself was a teacher. How beautifully he taught. She used to describe. So this is actually very wonderful to read. Okay, so this kind of text you can even prescribe in your colleges if you have autonomy. Okay, and this is Premchand's Gordon. This is Premchand is a Hindi writer. So you know Premchand only through English translation. Only those who can read Hindi can read directly Hindi version, the original. But we read only the English version. So this is from Hindi. And you can find this is Mohammad Bashir from Kerala. Tamilil Sukumaran. So Madhulugal. That's the title of the novel. It's originally in Malayalam. But see, we are very closer to Kerala, but we can't read their literature because we don't know the language. But we have Tamil and English translation. So translating emotional literature is a huge task, immense task, and the translator has to be very careful. The translator has to be very capable enough to translate, at least to some extent, translate the emotions of the original writer into the other language. So this is equivalent. What is equivalent? So when I say bus, do we have the exact word in Tamil? Yes, we have. We have Perundu. Maybe Hindi-speaking people, you have your own word for bus, right? Exact word you have. Because bus is everywhere. Bus is actually omnibus. Omni means, originally means omni, means everywhere. Omnipresent, omnipotent. So omni is everywhere. So bus is here. We call it, we have the equivalent, same word we have. For bus, Perundu. But nobody is using Perundu in Tamil, we say bus. Bus is almost become a Tamil word. Bus vanducha, pocha. So we ask like, okay, mountain. For mountain, we have Tamil word Malai. Dewdrops, it's a compound word. Okay, you can find the same equivalent. Equivalent means same exact word you have. Panituligal. Okay, then acid, amilam. I have given you only some examples. Okay, childhood. Childhood is again a compound word, but it is taken as a single word. Childhood, குழந்தை பருவம். So these are known as equivalent. Okay, now. Okay, equivalent. Now, take these words. Boat. Boat means padagu. But look at that synonyms. Raft. Okay, what is a raft? It means midavai. In Tamil, we call it. How many of you know? I don't know. Because this I have taken from, now currently I have translated Huckleberry Finn from English to Tamil. It's basically, it's related to the boys, Huckleberry's journey along with the river, Mississippi River. Okay, he travels. While he's traveling, he is using all these words. So while I was translating, I was blinking because first thing is we are not used to this water resource vocabulary. We know only bus, plane, train, all those things. Boat, somewhere when we go to a tourist spot, we see. But even there, you have different versions of boat. Okay, all these words I came across in the novel Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Okay, I was like puzzled to see all these synonyms. Boat, padage, raft. You can find the pictures are given. The pictures for your understanding. The teppam, Medavi teppam. So do you remember in temple festivals we have Teppathir. So God, the deity will be taken on a kind of like flat teppam and it will be floating on the lake or river. Adu pathina Madurai Kallalagar. So I always say, okay, raft means teppam that is used in Huckleberry Finn. Then canoe. Canoe is like this, okay, sharp-edged, lightweight boat. Skiff. Skiff is Odam. You can see here. Odam. This is canoe. This is skiff. You find a difference. For us, everything is the same. Boat. We call it boat. But it is not so. See, unless you are very careful with the usage, you can't translate. Okay, skiff is Odam. Then coracle. This is parisal. We call it parisal that we always find in rivers when you go for a kind of like excursion, you will find it. Okay, coracle, parisal. Then sailboat, schooner, it means paimaram. Paimaram means you have this kind of like a sail with the help of sail. Normally you see in movies, paimaram. Okay, parisal. Is it time now? Am I going beyond the time? Okay, catamaran. Catamaran is from Kattumaram. That is meant for the fisherman that you find in Chemmin, the novel Chemmin. Okay. Then yacht. Yacht is like a cruise. The boat, the bigger ship meant for cruise. Ula Padagu. In Tamil we have the exact thing. But people in Hindi, like you might find out whether you have words for this kind of English words in your mother tongue. Barge. Barge is meant for taking the cargo. See, this is barge. This is barge. It is to pull the cargo from ship to the shore. So that's barge. And sloop is single sail. This the other one is I told you sailboat that has got two sails, two on the paimaram. But here you have only single thing. Ottrai paimarappadadu. Steamboat. You can find steamboat. Neeravi engine, neeravi padade. Okay, steamboat. So you can find these many words for one single word, boat. Okay, how is it possible to translate? Okay, some more. Gondola boat. This is known as gondola boat. This is for actually for sightseeing. This is very much available in Venice, the Merchant of Venice. You have studied Venice, in the European country. There people are sitting and they'll be going for sightseeing. This is known as gondola. You don't call it boat. And of course, you know, ship. Ship, you are very familiar with ship, Titanic, right? Ship. Ship is a bigger one. So it contains, you can even stay there for so many days. It can travel for so many months also. So that is, these are gondola, boat and ship. So for boat, we have these many things. So those are equivalent, but in equivalent, synonyms are there. Equivalence. What is equivalence? You don't have the exact word. For bus, you have here and there. But here, when I say wedding, if I say, for English people, wedding, for Western people, wedding is not tali. So in Tamil, for example, if I have a sentence, he tied a yellow thread around her neck. Then if somebody is reading from the US, they'll be thinking, what is yellow thread? We are not using it. They won't know what yellow thread is, because that is our culture, Indian culture. And in North India, they're using Mangal Sutra. And we are using yellow thread. We don't even have the golden chain, but we can go for yellow thread. So for them, wedding means, for them, they don't have yellow thread, nothing. Okay, they will just exchange rings. Exchanging ring for Europeans, Western people. Yes.
I'm sorry for disturbance.
Time? Shall we stop?
Yes, ma'am. Today you end up the program today. Maybe tomorrow we can.
Time. Okay, let me stop with this. Okay, so we have equivalence. Okay, I'll just go for a glance. Within 5 minutes, I'll stop. Okay. So this is the role of translation. Previously, we talked about equivalent and equivalence. Then in our teaching side, we have classroom situation. If I ask a student to introduce yourself, what the student will do? A person from regional medium of education, the student will first start with selecting words from the mother tongue, then arranging words in the mother tongue, then attempting to translate that into English. Not possible, because immediately, like the Safa, the girl Safa, it's not possible. Finally, the student ends up with single words, stammering. Okay, that happens in, this is actually a kind of like a mental level. Okay, then what could be done? Initially, you take words, for example, bus, where in the bus, okay, boat, what is it? Then you translate it into syntax. There also translate. The third one is final translation. You can start speaking. So translation is important even in the classroom. Okay, translation is an inevitable part of our life. We have come to the concluding part of today's session. Tomorrow we are going to do a workshop class. I have got so many things to do, like activities. So today is, so I have taken images from net. So image credits I have given. So thank you for your patient listening. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can type in the chat box. I'm not able to get the audio properly. Please type in the chat box. I can answer you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the presentation. You have given each and every details about translation, and it is very clear and informative, ma'am. Thank you so much. As said by George Stinner, without translation, we would be living in the provinces bordering on silence. Your explanation made us to understand the importance and all the idea facts of translation, and it inspired us a lot. And we are eagerly waiting for the second session, ma'am. Thank you. Shall we continue the question answer session, ma'am?
If you want, you can ask the questions tomorrow also.
Okay, ma'am.
Don't worry, I'll share the PowerPoints with all of you, and I've given my email ID. You can just contact me. If you have any specific questions, okay, you can ask me later, because I'm a translator also. So what are the problems I face, or what are the compromises I'm making while translating? I'll show you some parts of my translation also. It's in print. It's in the print form. It's going to be published. Huckleberry Finn in Tamil, and I've already translated a book of cancer survivor. Okay, I'll just tell my views about it. I can share my views. So if you have any questions with regard to this basic points of translation, you can ask me, or we can discuss tomorrow, because I was so ambitious. I prepared a lot. Okay, maybe tomorrow we can discuss, or if you have any questions, you can ask me.
Okay, ma'am. Everyone is thanking you for your presentation. And here are some questions.
Yes, please.
Can we translate our students' textbook?
Yeah. Yes.
Someone is asking, can we translate the textbook of students?
Of course, you can translate, but it should be like authentic. So sometimes, in the name of translation, we spoil the content. So if you think, see, one thing is, as far as I'm concerned, if you give, for example, the students who are in English class, they want entirely in Tamil, that is not good. They can't develop their English. Maybe you can go for, if you take any, for example, the Grief short story. If you want to give the translation, what you can do is you can simplify it, okay? Like rewording it. I told you, rewording of the thing. Yeah, they can't go through the difficult words. So you can simplify it, give it in your own words, if possible. But translation, if you give the entire thing in Tamil, then they will learn only Tamil. At the time of examination, they can't reproduce the answer. Then they will suffer. So, being teachers, we have to see to it that we have to develop the language skills of the students also. Only if they read in English, they can understand. But the problem is they can't read the rich language of the writers. Okay, they can't read Jane Austen directly because it's very tough. But some students are there, in some private colleges, they are very good students. They are reading so many novels. Even we can't read those novels. They can read on their own. So there are some disparities between students. So you can help the students with your translation. Nothing wrong in it, but you have to see to it that it is approved by your college or something like that. Because sometimes, later, that's what we find in some bazaar gates also. I have seen students using some Vasan guide or something like where they read the whole poem, Stopping by Woods on a snowy evening, in Tamil they read. When I ask them, how will you write in English? They're not going to write in Tamil, right? So for understanding, you can give it in Tamil, but for learning, they have to know in English. So see to it that this is balanced, okay? No, nothing wrong in translating. You're helping them anyway. Your motive is to help them. That's very good. Nothing wrong. But see to it that they are learning English also, because they will totally forget English.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Another question, ma'am. How to tackle cultural barriers in translation?
The problems of translation. Yeah, that's what I'm going to discuss tomorrow. There are various problems. I told you, synonyms is one problem. So you can't simply, tomorrow I will give you a practical workshop, like how you can give them simple words. You start with words, common words. You can go to phrases in English, idiomatic phrases, then verbal phrasal verbs. Then you can go to simple sentences, how to translate. So you can make them understand and you make them translate also. Even if you don't have translation as a subject in your college, if you have 10 minutes time, free time, okay, you can give them simple words, or you can ask them to come out with difficult words in English. You try to give them translation, okay, try to help them with translation. Even if we don't know, you can refer to dictionary, nothing wrong in it. Okay, synonyms in English. For example, I told you, boat. For boat, instead of giving padage, you can give different thing, like you have coracle. Where have you seen the coracle? Where have you seen the skiff? Okay, so you are introducing new words to them, the students. So he will just take those words and his vocabulary will develop. So it's up to you to do it. So there are so many barriers, I understand. But what are the barriers? How to overcome it? That we have done in our PG course, the advanced aspects of translation studies in PSG college, that I am going to discuss tomorrow, because I want to just give the basics of translation today. Tomorrow we are going to completely, entirely, we are going to do activities in the session, right? So tomorrow we'll discuss that.
Okay, ma'am. One final question, ma'am. What is your advice to a beginner's researcher in the area of translation? Should the person start with theories or practice?
Research. You're talking about research?
Yes, ma'am.
Research with translation. Recently, I think May 27th, I gave a speech on research and translation, the connecting dots. That is available in YouTube. Maybe if you want, I can send the link. Okay, tomorrow you can go and see what are the possible areas of research related to translation. I already told you, translation is not a single entity. It is connected to linguistics. Ferdinand de Saussure, okay, sign, signified, okay, signs, signifier, signified, everything is related to that, because you are handling with signs, that is language. Okay, so there are lots of possibilities related to translation with regard to research oriented activities. And another thing is, translated works you can take and do. Now I told you, Charan Kumar Limbale from Marathi. Instead of sticking on Bama, you can compare Bama's writings, what kind of life, Dalit life you find in Tamil Nadu with Maharashtra or anywhere. If you know any writer from other, but only thing is these people, they have written in their mother tongue, regional languages. So either you can, being a person who knows 2 languages, you can translate. You yourself can translate. That's going to be a great contribution because we all know English and we have a mother tongue. Only we have this privilege, minimum 2 languages, right? So we can translate. That is possible. So if you know any Dalit writer from Kannada, you can very well translate. And you can use that book for research. And nobody will ask you questions in the Viva because nobody knows. If you keep on doing on Anita Desai, Inandra Shakal or anybody, then everybody knows because people keep on doing on these people, these writers, elite group of writers. So I have spoke on this for 1 hour in the previous webinar. It was conducted by Vasavi College, Erode. Okay, so I'll give you the link. You can just go and watch, and you have other speakers also. You can listen to them also. It's very good webinar organized by Vasavi College. So we can talk at length. Okay, maybe in the near future, very soon. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, ma'am. All the participants are asking for to ask questions directly, ma'am. For the time limit, we can have that direct question and answer session tomorrow.
Yeah, can we have questions? Okay, we can. The thing is, audio is not clear, so it's very tough for me to get. I think my audio is okay for you all.
Yes, you're audible, ma'am.
Okay, maybe I don't know.
Participants are asking, want to ask you direct questions. They want to unmute themselves, but we are running out of time, ma'am.
Yeah, that's what.
We can
Okay,
conclude the session. Tomorrow we can have the question and answers
okay.
session, ma'am.
Okay, it's already time, I think.
Yes,
for me,
ma'am.
no problem. Okay, I think many of you may have some problems like technical problems, net problems. Okay, it's okay, no problem. Anyway, I have given my email ID. If you want, I can give you my contact number. You can talk to me, no problem.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
It's up to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You have given a wonderful session, a deep translation area you have talked. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Welcome. We'll
I would like to invite Professor Dharmaraj to give out a vote of thanks.
Cheerful morning to all. Gratitude is our attitude. It is Sunday, a holiday, jolly day. We enjoy at home. In this session, Parvati Arts Science College, we presents a webinar, Translation Practice, a special day. First and foremost, I thank our God Almighty who has given this wonderful opportunity to have this program. I thank Father of Translation, St. Jerome, a biblical translator, a Christian scholar, priest, confessor, theologian, historian in Latin ancient time. Translation enables effective communication between people around the world. It is a courier for the transmission of knowledge. I am very happy to thank your resource person, Madam Dr. Dharani, MA, MPhil, MEd, PGDCA, PhD. In very effective means of communication and textual approach, informative approach, formalistic approach, practical approach, everything, a collective manner you explain, ma'am. Really, we are privileged to thank you. I thank you, ma'am.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
I thank our management, especially for our Secretary of Parvati Arts Science College, Rotary and Sridhar sir, for a financial and moral support. We conduct this program. I thank you, sir. I thank our young director, a man of new innovation and man of new creation. Yes, Praveen sir, I thank you. I thank our eminent principal, sir, Dr. S. Sugumar, for his eminent role. We conduct this program. I thank you, sir. I thank energetic Vice Principal, sir, Dr. G. Srinivasan, for your moral support. We thank you, sir. I thank Head of the Department of Parvati Arts Science College, English Department, Madam Miss Rajalashmi, for your support. We thank you, ma'am. I thank all the participants, especially for the stars of today, doctors, scholars, participants, all of you. I thank one and all. I thank you very much. Have a nice day. Happy Sunday. Enjoy well.
Thank you, everyone. I have given my mail ID here. You can just check into it. And you can, if you want to send me queries, you can send. Okay, I'll answer tomorrow. No problem. Thank you so much, sir. Nice being with you all. See you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.
Thank you,
Stay
ma'am.
safe. Bye.